Ding ding, round one. It's the Merrell Vapor Glove up against the XERO Prio. Let's see who comes out on top. Let's get it rolling. So the Vapor Glove comes in at 173 grams and the official stats of the XERO come in at 187 grams. So holding them, there feels like a more significant difference than that. The Merrell Vapor Glove feels significantly lighter than the XERO shoe. I think there's more than around a 20 gram difference in my opinion. I've got both the insoles in here for purpose of this review, and I must say that the XERO feels considerably heavier than the Merrell Vapor Glove. Now that's not to say that either of them are like wearing a sack of taters on your shoes. They're both an incredibly light shoe, but the Merrell Vapor Glove does edge it in the weight department. Okay, let's look at the soles. Now before we get cracking again, if you want the best deals on either of these shoes, I've had a look around and they're in the comments down below, so please give those a click. If you're interested in either of those shoes, give them a blast and see what you think. Now, when we're looking at the shoes, with insoles, you've got 5.5 millimeters on the Merrell Vapor Glove here, and you've got 7.5 millimeters on the XERO. If you take the insole out, you're losing I think 2 millimeters on both, so 3.5 millimeters versus 5.5 millimeters. So essentially, the XERO has 2 millimeters more padding than the Merrell Vapor Glove. If you look at the traction, again, the lugs are not massively dissimilar, to be perfectly honest. The Merrells come with a Vibram sole, obviously. Vibrams are, in my opinion, head of the game with barefoot running shoes. But the lugs on the XERO is actually fantastic as well. So if you're looking at just thinness, then you've got to give it to the Merrells, but both of them perform very well. The XEROs perform very well on wet ground. The triangular lugs are pretty grippy as well. The Merrell Vapor Glove, not quite so grippy when it gets wet, but you know, they're pretty good. They perform well in the wet. They both perform well on paved surfaces. Not a great deal in it in terms of grip in that respect. The thickness though is a big difference maker for me. That 2 millimeters you can really feel. These have a decent amount of ground perception. The XEROs on the other hand don't really have any. It simulates a barefoot feel within the shoe, which we'll cover off a bit later. Okay, let's talk about upper. Now in general, the theme of this video is there's a hell of a lot less to the Merrell than there is to the XERO. So there's a lot more to the upper here. It's a lot more padded in places, so a lot more padded around the heel, whereas the Vapor Glove essentially has no padding really anywhere on the shoe. A minimal amount of padding for the Merrell on the tongue of the shoe, whereas the XERO has a decent amount of padding on the tongue. A very substantial amount of padding around the heel, very substantial, and generally relatively thick throughout the shoe, throughout the upper. So relatively padded, well protected upper, reflective, pretty waterproof, little bit padded for my liking. If I'm going for a minimalist shoe, I like to actually feel like it's minimalist, and the Vapor Glove is a lot more minimalist. Both of them have pros and cons, which we'll cover off in terms of comfort, but for pure barefoot feel and the perception of what's going on around you, the combination of the sole and the upper from the Merrell Vapor Glove for me is better. A lot of people do really enjoy the padding and the comfort that the XEROs provide, while not truly minimalist. The comfort-wise that it provides these people that have fed back to me is much appreciated. For me, my personal preference, Vapor Glove. Next thing to consider, seeing as these are both barefoot minimalist style running shoes that are supposed to simulate the barefoot running experience, is barefoot feel. They couldn't be in more contrast in my opinion. So the fact that, as we've touched on, the Merrell Vapor Glove is a far more minimal shoe. It's far more flexible. You can roll it up into a little ball. What that means is ground perception of everything that's going on with the terrain underneath your feet, you are aware of. Your body is sending those signals backwards and forwards, up and down, and as we know, barefoot running just simulates this euphoric experience, this happy euphoric experience, and running in a pair of Merrells will allow that perception of what's happening underneath your feet. In contrast, what the XERO aims to do, in my experience of running in it at the very least, is simulate a barefoot running experience within the shoe itself. So the shoe is very sort of cased, closed in. As we know, the sole is a lot thicker and there's a lot more padding going on with this shoe. So you're not going to be aware necessarily as much of what's going on underneath the ground beneath your feet. What it does is simulates the barefoot running experience within the confines of the actual shoe itself, right? Now, what that means is it feels like always just running, as I say, barefoot on grass, barefoot on track within the shoe. It's strange. So this Merrell Vapor Glove aims to simulate the barefoot running experience, whatever terrain you're running on, albeit a dulled experience through the sole, whereas this feels like running barefoot, always on grass or on a track, no matter where you are. The toe box in the XEROs is far bigger. So what that means is that your toes are able to splay out a lot more and behave as if they were completely barefoot. Whereas the Vapor Gloves, the toe box is slightly narrower. It's not narrow by any stretch of the imagination, but if you're looking at which one offers the most room for the toes to splay out on impact, it's definitely the XEROs. Again, this comes down to a matter of preference, whether or not you want to feel every nook and cranny that's going on underneath your feet, or whether you want the experience to be simulated within the shoe. That's a matter of preference, that's up to you. For me, my preference would be feeling everything that's going on beneath me, but a lot of people absolutely love the dreamy barefoot running experience on grass or on track. So it's up for you guys to decide. Comfort. This is where I run into some issues, to be perfectly honest. We'll start with, because it's more straightforward in the XERO, the shoe comes up small. We'll talk about that in the sizing. The shoe is very padded, as we've mentioned, but I have a number of issues with rubbing. So the heel, for example, incredibly padded, well padded heel area. I get a tremendous amount of rubbing on my heel when I run in these. I don't know why, can't say, but it happens every single time, time in, time out, rubbing on the heel. And what's worse, I get running in the toe box, and my little toe will rub against where the stitching is on the inside here, in socks, outside of socks, whatever. I cannot run barefoot in a pair of these. I cannot run comfortably in socks. If I run in a pair of socks of these, there'll be blood on the socks after the run. Now, I should highlight, I think I have not heard reports from anybody else of experiencing this. So this may very well be a personal problem to me. Many people run in these, absolutely no problem at all, without any rubbing. But for me, personally, I've experienced a certain level of running in the XEROs. Now, when it comes to the Merrells, I need to caveat at the end of what I'm saying here, but they are an incredibly comfortable shoe, far less padding, so on paper they should be more uncomfortable. There's essentially no padding in this shoe whatsoever, but you can wear it barefoot, not a problem at all, or at least I've experienced no issues running in the Merrell Vapor Gloves barefoot with socks, whatever, doesn't matter. I can run comfortably, no worries at all. Now, the one caveat that I'm talking about is that the heel sits quite low. For me, I'm a tall person. The way the heel sits, for some reason, and it happened with an old pair of shoes called the Innovate Berex 150s or 180s, for me as well, just destroys my Achilles. I can go for one run in these and my Achilles will be done for. 2 runs and I'm out for a couple of weeks. You know, so for me, and again, this isn't an issue that's really experienced by anyone else, it's so rare, but for me, the way the heel sits just blows my Achilles every time and I can't run with it. So, minus the Achilles issue, which I know for a fact is really me and a handful of other people, it's got to be the Merrell that's more comfortable, just because the amount of rubbing that I experience in the XEROs. However, you know, if we're talking pure comfort, these are more comfortable for me because there's no rubbing in them. The rubbing in these was pretty extreme. Didn't have a great deal of skin left on some of my toes after running in them. Again, both of these issues seem to be completely down to me and personal to me. I wish I didn't have them, but I do. If you remove both of those issues, both a comfortable shoe, I'd go with the Merrells because they're more minimal, more barefoot sort of experience. But if you want a padded, comfortable shoe, as long as you don't have any rubbing in them, then you can go for the XEROs. Durability wise, for a minimalist shoe, both very good, both above average for a minimalist shoe. Now the reason I'm calling out minimalist shoe here specifically is that if you think about a conventional shoe, the thickness of their sole considerably thicker than both of these shoes here. The upper, again, considerably thicker. You can expect a minimalist shoe to wear out quicker than your more traditional shoe simply because there's less materials there. That's just a fact. Set your expectations to realistic. These shoes, all minimalist shoes in general, are going to wear out faster than the conventional shoe. And that's fine in my experience, that's fine in my opinion. Durability wise, if you're to face these two off against each other, these are weightier, they've got more materials to them, the XEROs, and they'll generally perform better. The Merrell Vapor Glove, again, will outperform and outlast, in my experience, a Vibram 5-finger. However, I've heard many rumours about the glue coming apart and things like that. I personally haven't experienced that. When I run in these, they outlast the Vibram 5-finger. However, the XEROs will outlast the Merrell Vapor Glove. We'll get onto value and value per mile a little bit later because the Merrells are slightly cheaper. But in terms of durability, the XERO will outlast the Merrells, almost certainly. We'll quickly talk about sizing. Merrell Vapor Gloves, I'm a UK size 12. These are a UK size 12. They fit fine. You should just be able to order your normal size, no worries at all. Nothing left to talk about that. Job done, bish bash bosh. The XEROs, as I say, I'm a size 12. Always have been, born a size 12, and always will be. Big feet, big hands, you know the rest. Now, I've had to buy a 13.5 UK. There you go. 1.5 sizes up, and they still feel quite tight and small. Now the toe box is wide, I'll give it that, that's fine, but the rest of the shoe feels small. Even for a 13.5, they don't feel like a 13.5. They don't feel like a 12, they feel small. This is a known issue. So XERO, sort it out, make your shoes the right size because these are too small. It's supposed to be a barefoot shoe, you're supposed to have room in it. These feel small even at a 13.5. 13.5 should be monstrous. And if you look, this is size 12, this is the worst comparison ever, but you know, practically the same length, and obviously there's a lot more padding and materials going on in the XEROs. So XERO, get your sizing sorted out. Finally, we're going to talk about value, and we'll talk about value per mile. So the XEROs will outlast the Merrells by a short margin, not by much, just by a little. The XEROs are also more expensive slightly than the Merrells. As I say, the deals in the description down below, give it a click and have a look. But essentially the Merrells will come in, you can get a good deal on a Merrell for $60, 60 quid, maybe slightly up, maybe slightly down if you shop around. The XERO is going to cost you around $90, £90, $90, maybe $100. You might be able to get a better deal, but they fluctuate less. Merrells, on the other hand, you can pick up pretty cheap, and value for mile, although they're going to last slightly less amount of time than the XERO, I would say value for mile, because they are so cheap, you can't really beat a Merrell Vapor Glove for value per mile based on, you know, the fact that it's cheap as chips in terms of running shoes and minimalist running shoes in general, which do tend to rack up the cost a little bit. So do check out the links in the description down there below if you want to check out some deals. Also, guys, I've got online running coaching up and running, working with some really great clients. If you're interested in that, calclashfitness@gmail.com. Links in the description as well, the email address in the description down below. Drop me an email with what you're after and we'll put a plan together and I'll work with you on a coaching basis. But for now, let me know which one's your favourite, the XERO, the Merrell, maybe it's something else. Let the community know. You know what to do by now. Like, share, subscribe, keep it rolling.